It's always an honor when I get a chance to talk to a veteran, and I don't care where, who has served our country. Sergeant Stephanie J. Shannon is a #1 international best-selling author of the book Battling the Storm Within. She's an entrepreneur. She's a consultant, inspirational speaker, veteran advocate who has over 27 years of experience in the fields of business, social work, community development, leadership, ministry, collaborations, workshops, and seminars. She's an honorably discharged disabled U.S. Army veteran who served her country for 8 years, including the 1991 Desert Storm, Desert Shield, Persian Gulf War I. She earned her bachelor's in psychology at Grand Valley State University in 1996. She has training in in the fields of paralegal, real estate, social work, entrepreneurship, and business. This lady is an inspiration, and we welcome to our show today Sergeant Stephanie Shannon here on the Gary Sutton Show. Stephanie, an honor to have you with us, and thank you so much for the service to our country.
Thank you. I appreciate this.
Do you ever get tired of hearing that? I mean, for us, it seems so many times there's not more that we can do other than help people where we see them and all that. But we just feel, I think, a necessity to say thank you. And I hear so many people say, no problem. And that's one of the things that veterans will say many times, no problem, I was just doing my job. And yet we see it as so much more than that.
Yes, I believe what happens is that, the military is a rare institution that most people don't join. We make up about 10% of the population. And I think what's happening now is a big shift to where the military veterans such as me are now speaking out on their story about something they've experienced in trauma and giving, I would say, the civilian world an insight on some of the things that we suffered through and how our lives are challenged once we return back from war.
Let's talk a little bit about that this morning. I guess I would ask you is you talk about 10% being in the military. What attracted you to the military to start with?
Well, I was always athletic. I was adventurous, and back in 80, well, actually joined in 89, that's what the selling was. It was be all you can be. You see these posters, you can travel the world, you can go and get your college education. And I just was, excited about it. I was like, oh, this would be great. I think I'm going to go this route and check it out and see what comes out of it. So that's what attracted me, was the potential of adventure and living a life that the average person wouldn't have.
Well, when you read your bio, you certainly have been all you can be, and you continue to be more. And so obviously something worked there. It appealed to you, and you certainly took advantage of it in a very positive way.
Yeah, that's what I've always been an ambitious person, and I believe that you basically have full control of your destiny, and you make the choices. And I was willing to put in the hard work, and I never was lazy, I would say, or a person that let grass grow under my feet. I believe in opportunities, and that's what the military was for me. It was an opportunity to expand my career interests.
Stephanie, you talk about the problems and the issues that as a woman in the military, your active duty perhaps was different than that of your male colleagues. Tell us a little bit about that, because we have that discussion, I think, in our country all the time regarding how men and how women are seen in the military, and it's oftentimes not exactly the same, even though that's kind of the way we have it set up, right?
Yes, definitely. I figured if they let us in, they must have some system for us. And I found out different. When I served, there's very few women. It's a lot of services wasn't catered to women. I found myself really disconnected in a sense because some of the emotional and mental and physical challenges I had, I couldn't really express this pain and suffering. You just had to tough it up. And I think that's the difference in the military between men and women, is that the expectations are the same, but often I wasn't aware that I was going to work so hard. I was a 88 night truck driver. I went into the MOS of transportation specialist. And I took the MOS because I was like, cool, I'll be traveling and I'll be busy, that'll be fun. I could have went into any area. But when I got assigned to my unit and actually served in Desert Storm, I drove 14-ton tractor trailers. And that was a trucker's job. That was a big man job. I was only like 125 pounds and 5'3". I was a little girl. And I injured myself, and it was hard work. And I think that part right there, I wasn't aware of those factors that I would suffer long-term injuries like I have.
Do you, how should the military be handling those kind of things? There's a lot of people that stand on one side of the argument, and they'll say, well, women should be able to do the same thing as men if they want to be able to pay the same and all that kind of stuff. You hear that argument, I'm sure, all the time. And then there's the other side that says, okay, listen, is there anything wrong with women wanting to serve their country any more than a man wants to serve his country? And yet, we say, okay, there are different things that women maybe can do in those situations that would be different from a man and yet no less important in the cause.
Oh, definitely, I agree. I feel like you should be able to carry your weight if you sign up for something, but I think factors should be taken into consideration, like PT, physical fitness standards are different from men and women. There's not too much difference, but now they're trying to, quote-unquote, get women into combat jobs. I don't agree with that. I personally can see myself in the trench for 30 days without a shower. And out in the desert, that would mentally wear me out. I think it's the opportunity should be presented, but I think those factors should be taken into consideration, and often than not.
Stephanie, what are some of the problems and the issues that soldiers often encounter during their military service? And obviously, you just spoke about something you encountered as a woman, as a soldier who happens to be a woman, compared to maybe some of the ones that are encountered for a soldier who happens to be a man.
Well, one of the major issues now that is coming out is the military sexual trauma epidemic in the military. It's really real. A military sexual trauma is something where it can happen to anyone, male, female, and it includes rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment, anything in the sexual nature where it's unwanted, unrepeated attention, coercion, different types of tactics to stress you out. And that's what they took me through. It was a lot of mental, emotional gymnastics. I knew it was because I was a woman and there was no system of reporting in place. 1 in 3 women in the military are sexually assaulted, and men, 38 men are sexually assaulted every day in the military. And they don't talk about this issue because it's embarrassment to the country. But I know a lot of the fellow victims of MST that have suffered it, and a lot of the men are still suffering silently. And I see more help now at the VA level for women, but it lacks in the help for male veterans. So that's something a lot of people are not aware of, is that when a man joins the military, it increases his chance 10% to be raped.
How prevalent is it? I mean, that's a pretty big charge. So are there any numbers to kind of back that up at all, Stephanie, from what you've been able to gather or see over the years?
Oh, well, they had a recent report in 2014, 26,000 military personnel complained and reported confidentially that they had military sexual trauma issues, sexual assault, sexual harassment. But the thing was 70% do not report because of fear of retaliation, and that was the same thing here that I suffered was going to the person, quote-unquote, that was your offender, usually is your first-line supervisor or someone in your squad or someone that they know, and you have to go through the chain of command, and usually that doesn't work so well because the commander is in charge and decides if that case will go forward or not.
How did the military handle your particular military sexual trauma? How did they handle that?
They didn't. There was no system in reporting. I suffered silently, and I had 2 other friends. One was sexually assaulted, one was raped. There was no justice in place, no criminal charges or anything of that nature at all.
I guess and I don't want to go too deep into this, but I guess I want to ask how the military or how people in the military go about doing this. I mean, obviously they're aware then that there's not going to be a whole lot done. So what types of things are done? Give me an example of what you would consider. I mean, obviously our minds can get around, the blatant ones, but sexual military harassment. Give me some ideas what that might be like.
Yeah, that's a gray area. That could be your leader, your squad leader, promising, promotion if you do him a sexual favor, or you get more time off because you're his little girlfriend. Things like that. The groping, the touching, the little pet names. Those areas of violation of personal boundaries happen quite often.
Were you surprised when it happened to you? Was that something you ever expected to happen when you were in the military?
No, not at all. I expected the military, from my naive perspective, was this organization has been established for years. It has all these ethics, all these rules in place. There was no fraternization. You can't do this, you can't do that. So I was like, wow, But I found out it's really a world of gray area. It depends on who your leader is. So, yes, I was definitely hurt and devastated by it. That's where my trauma came from was, mistreatment and abuse of my leaders and fellow soldiers. And I couldn't believe that this was happening and no one was going to do anything about it. I just had to suffer through.
You are very public about your battle with PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. In fact, you say you lived with this for 20 years without knowing that's the condition you had. We hear about a lot of soldiers that have this, and some of them it affects right away. Others, it is a kind of a delayed thing. Tell us about yours and how that kind of came into play.
My post-traumatic stress disorder, I didn't know I was diagnosed. I just knew I was depressed, I had anxiety, I had these fears, these nightmares. And I reported on our way of an exit interview that, I needed mental health treatment. They asked general questions, and I never had got any follow-up. And you don't admit weaknesses. To admit that you're stressed out or under some like type of pressure, that's not something that is really supported. So I think what happened to me was I was really alarmed by the amount of harassment and exposure to this. And I think what happens is that over the years, I never talked about it because, quote unquote, you don't talk about those things. These are, taboo. You don't touch these areas because they're not really, how can I say, something that people owe. So my difficulty I had was admitting, someone validating and saying, yes, you were violated. This is what we're going to do. So I didn't have support. I struggled for years. I actually filed for my VA benefits, and they said they lost my records. So I was sitting here for all these years without any records or any, proof that what happened to me. And then in 2010, when I hired an attorney, my records just suddenly showed up.
Isn't that amazing how that happens sometimes? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many veterans feel they don't have the support they need to re-enter into civilian life. From your vantage point, having been a veteran, having served, having come back into civilian life, having seen it, having dealt with it now, what needs to change for America to make actual progress in providing assistance for our veterans so they can recover from those kinds of emotional and physical and psychological traumas? Are we doing well enough by our veterans right now, or is there more need to be done?
Oh, more need to be done. I would say the new troops are really getting, the red carpet. They're getting the seamless transition services and whatnot. But you have Vietnam veterans, you have veterans in my area and other Gulf War veteran areas that I would say in the cracks. I think what needs to happen is at the military, they need to have a deeper out-processing system where they really, or even while you're in, if you're having these anxieties and these fears and mental health, issues, that you need that treatment opposed to being flagged as a weak link or even marked or discharged for unmedical. Work with that soldier, and then when they get out, have a direct line connection. And that's where you fall into the cracks, is that where do I go? Who do I, what directions do I go in? And that was not very visible to me. So I think we need to do a better job at supporting veterans, especially like now what I do is peer-to-peer support groups. I do advocacy myself because I feel if someone was there for me, my life would have been different. So I feel like I owe my fellow veterans the same thing.
We're talking with Sergeant Stephanie J. Shannon, retired from the United States military, served in Desert Storm. How can one overcome, I guess I want to say a lack of support and negativity from friends and family? And then obviously, when you have certain kinds of mental illnesses like PTSD, how can you effectively then, you're back here now with your kids, how are you going to parent your children? I want to come back and ask you those two questions, Stephanie. We're going to take a very quick break, and we'll be back, and I'll hit you with those two questions. I think there's some answers there that are very important to people, veterans returning home from serving our country. Sergeant Stephanie Shannon with us. She served in the Gulf War. I've talked to a lot of soldiers over the years and the heroes who walk among us who come back, and you don't just switch the switch back on and go right back into civilian life when you've been serving overseas in a combat area. It takes some time. And so Stephanie Shannon with us this morning, a sergeant retired honorably from the military, has been talking a little bit about not only post-traumatic stress syndrome, but post-sexual stress syndrome as well. And when you come back home with some of these illnesses, some mental, how do you effectively parent your kids? And where's the support? And where's the friendship many times from friends and family? Is it still there for you? We asked Stephanie that question. We come back here on the show. Stephanie, two very interesting questions there. I mean, did you get the kind of help when you got back home where people said, okay, we realize you've been serving in a forward area there and, you've been serving the country, and you're coming back. You've seen a lot of things. You've been involved in a lot of things. Now you're coming back here. Hey, let's just throw you right back into population and things will be normal. Doesn't work like that, does it?
No, it doesn't. I was very estranged from my family. I looked at everybody different. Military, the PTSD kind of puts you on hyper alert. After, always being on guard, always wondering if a Scud missile was going to drop, if you're going to be ambushed. Your nervous system is kind of high, anxiety. And I was different. I didn't even realize how different I was. And I used to do things differently. And instead of people trying to understand me, they were trying to mock and giggle about it. And that hurt. So I think what it was this, that their lack of understanding caused me to maybe even think even more negative about myself. I didn't feel good. I have just recently, in the last maybe 5 years, really embraced the title of being a veteran. It was embarrassing to me when you come back home and there's no support, and then you don't look. You got your arms, you got your legs, your head, and you don't have a bullet in your head. You're alive. Be thankful. That's how I was treated. Opposed to, I had this invisible wound, this psychological wound. And when they saw these symptoms, instead of saying, hey, you're all right, you need some help and support, it was kind of more or less like, boy, she's weird. And it was a very difficult, lonely walk. What happened was I lived isolated, or I was a workaholic, as you can see. I avoided my pain. I worked all the time, instead of dealing with the nightmares and the tremors and the fears. And then it got to a point where I got burned out. In 2008, my doctor took me off on stress list. She said, you need to take care of yourself. And that's when I really hit it, and I was like, wow, who else is going to help me but me?
Is this an area that people don't understand? I mean, I can hear a lot of people who used to serve and probably many years ago, and even before the time you were there, and saying, we came back home, we had to just make our way through it. But yet we see an awful lot of people whose lives were destroyed. Particularly, I remember a lot of Vietnam veterans and reading about them and the tough lives that many of them went through, and others came back and they managed to kind of reacclimate. So it is a big problem, I think.
Oh, definitely. I work with veterans now. Like I said, Vietnam veterans. Yeah, I even have other veterans that are saying I was sexually assaulted and I didn't tell anybody, and what do I do? This is years later. So that's definitely a big, I would say, gap, and that's what I'm trying to do, is to try to communicate to the civilian world what it is to be a veteran that experienced trauma and live like that, to try to bring awareness, but also to help my brothers and sisters in arms to face their own issues, because no one's going to help you but you. And that's when I finally realized that it was up to me to face all my fears and all my hurts and pain. And that's when I ended up in the homeless veteran program here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and it turned my life around.
Wow.
It was hard to take that because I was independent. I have a bachelor's degree. I work. I'm self-employed. I have these great things, but I couldn't take care of myself anymore. So it took a big, I would say, swallowing of pride and saying, I need help. And I had a lot of trust issues because I tried to reach out before, and my, the breach of confidentiality happened and things like that. So I would encourage any veteran to try again, reach out again. If that VA doesn't work, go to another one.
Mm-hmm.
If that counselor is not good, go to another one.
We have a pretty good VA in our area here, at least by all accounts, at Lebanon. Up the road here. When did you know, we're in our final minute here, but when did you know that you'd kind of turn the corner and you could put a smile on your face again and you were going where you needed to go? When did you realize that moment?
When I entered therapy, and that's where the book came from, I started journaling. I started journaling my pain. I was able to put my pain out on paper. I feel like I found my voice, and I could speak again, and I was being heard, if anything, by myself. I finally validated myself, and that's when the light went off. Like, wow, I can be healed and restored and live again, but it's for me to do. So that's when that change was for me. It was realizing that I was able to give myself the power to stand up and be restored. And I think that's where the light comes on, is when you look within yourself, which is a tough thing to do.
And I know you have a great faith in God who helped you also, as you said.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's what kept me over the years, is my faith in God, because if it wasn't for God, I can tell you, like I said, when my Shannon was there, I probably wouldn't be here. But I know for a fact that he had a plan for my life, so I kept, feel like if I was waking up every day, it had to be a purpose.
Right, and obviously you've shared that with others. You've helped other people. The name of the book Battling the Storm Within. Where can people pick that up if they want to read that and read about your experiences?
I'm right there on my website, battlingthestormwithin.com. I got free reports. I got resources. I'm a veteran advocate. I'm connected to 60 veterans across the nation right at my website. And also at Amazon, I got ebooks, paperback, and even audio.
Wow. So you're out there everywhere. Stephanie, it's been an honor talking to you this morning. I appreciate you being so candid with us. And thank you again for your service to our country. And now your service to fellow man out there and woman as you come home here to help others. And also you've learned how to help yourself. It's a wonderful re-entry, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm enjoying my life now.
Well, great. I'm glad to hear it. Stephanie, thanks for joining us this morning here on the Gary Sutton Show.
Right.
Truly amazing. Great story there. Yeah. From Stephanie Shannon, and just one person's story. And I know every veteran is probably different, but glad that she has found a way to a happier life. Yeah.